Hello everyone, and welcome to this presentation on Maryland Solar Schools. This presentation is brought to you by the Solar Foundation, or TSF for short. TSF is an independent national 501c3 nonprofit located in Washington, D.C., and our mission is to increase the understanding of solar energy through research that educates the public and transforms markets. We are widely known for our annual national and state solar job census, where we count the number of solar workers in the country. And as of 2014, the U.S. had nearly 174,000 solar workers in the industry, which was up 86% from just half a decade ago. TSF is also involved in a number of education and training programs, including the Department of Energy's Solar Ops program, where we provide resources and technical assistance to local governments looking to reduce the red tape and cost of going solar. And finally, the Solar Foundation is growing a solar schools program, starting with the Maryland Solar Schools Report. We also co-chair the Solar Schools Consortium, aimed to amplify the successes of solar schools with our members, such as the National Resources Defense Council, the U.S. Green Building Council, and the Foundation for Environmental Education. Speaking of the Solar Foundation's Solar Schools program, in 2014, we released the first comprehensive database of K-12 solar schools in the U.S. In that report, titled Brighter Future, we found 3,752 solar schools, which meant nearly 2.7 million students attended a school with solar. Out of these 3,752 schools, over 99% have solar photovoltaic systems. These 3,727 schools together have an annual energy value of nearly $78 million, which is equivalent to about $21,000 per school per year, nearly 2,200 starting teacher salaries, or 155,000 tablet computers. Here's a map illustrating all the solar schools nationwide. As you may see, the east and west coasts are well populated with solar schools, with some schools in the central region of the U.S. This interactive map, available on our website at schools.tsf.org, is a valuable tool because an individual can zoom into a particular region and click on a specific school to learn more about the details of their solar energy system. This map can also show the schools in the nation that can cost-effectively go solar at a price point of $2 a watt, all the yellow dots, and $2.50 per watt, all the green dots, for going solar. And as you can see, there are many, many schools in the nation that can cost-effectively deploy solar. In fact, the untapped potential for solar schools is quite massive. The Brighter Future report found between 40,000 and 72,000 more schools could go solar cost-effectively, representing 60% of schools nationwide. If all 72,000 schools deployed solar systems equivalent to their student body size, the total PV capacity would equal 5,400 megawatts, generating 6.9 million megawatt hours of electricity each year, which is about $800 million in avoided electricity costs. In fact, 450 individual school districts could save over $1 million over the course of 30 years in the country, including 9 school districts in the state of Maryland. While there are a wide variety of technologies currently on the market today, the 3 most common technologies are solar photovoltaic, solar hot water or solar thermal, and concentrated solar power. Solar photovoltaic, commonly referred to as solar PV, uses panels made out of photovoltaic cells that converts energy from the sun to electricity. Solar PV is a modular technology that could be sized to power a single home to an entire office building or industrial facility. Its flexibility and relative simplicity has made it the most popular option for solar energy production today. Another common technology, solar hot water or solar thermal, harnesses the sun's thermal energy to heat water or another substance, such as antifreeze, which is made available to satisfy hot water or space heating and cooling needs for residential, commercial, or industrial facilities. Concentrated solar power, or CSP systems, uses mirrors to focus light to heat a contained substance such as molten salts or water to create steam. The heat from that substance is harnessed to drive a mechanical engine, which subsequently drives an electric generator. Unlike solar PV systems, CSP systems are for the most part only commercially viable on a large scale, and currently only seen in Southern California and the desert Southwest. Because most solar schools in the country uses solar PV, let's dive a little deeper into this solar technology. Solar PV panels or modules are made up of individual photovoltaic cells. These panels can be combined together to create an array. The panels themselves are measured in terms of their power or capacity rating. This rating comes in the form of watts. The total capacity rating of an array will typically be presented in the form of kilowatts or 1,000 watts, or for large installations, megawatts or 1,000 kilowatts. As sunlight hits the photovoltaic cells, these cells produce electricity. The amount of electricity that the system produces over a period of time is measured in watt hours, or more commonly in kilowatt hours. You may recognize this metric from your electric bill that you receive every single month. So to give you a better sense of scale of each solar system, let's look at what the typical solar PV capacity requirements are for different use cases. These are by no means hard and fast rules for system sizes, but only to provide you with a good rough estimate. A residential installation will typically be within the single kilowatt range. Offices can vary significantly depending on their energy needs and available space, where we can see systems from the tens to the hundreds of kilowatts of capacity. Large industrial facilities will often install systems in the megawatt range thanks to the higher energy needs and more available space. And finally, a project developed for the purposes of selling electricity back to the utility will usually be in the multi-megawatt range. Next up, we'll talk about solar in Maryland and how it fits into the state's energy policies. So one of the biggest questions everyone should be asking is why Maryland should go solar. Why should we care? So one of the best reasons why Maryland should go solar is that Maryland wants to go solar. So Maryland has some stringent laws regarding the use of fossil fuels, and solar energy is the smart alternative. For example, the Empower Maryland Energy Efficiency Act of 2008 aims to reduce per capita electricity consumption by 15% by the end of 2015 based on 2007 levels. The Greenhouse Gas Emissions Reduction Act aims to reduce greenhouse gases by 25% based on 2006 levels by the year 2020. And finally, the state's Renewable Portfolio Standards, or RSP, stipulates that 20% of the state's retail electricity sales have to come from renewables by the year 2022, including a 2% solar carve-out by the year 2020. Another reason why Maryland should go solar is that the price of solar is falling over the last few years across all sectors, and the trend is expected to keep going down for the next several years. As you can see, non-residential system prices, the solid orange line, which can apply to schools, is over $1 cheaper than the average residential system price, or the solid blue line. Furthermore, in Maryland, the non-residential solar prices for the most part is lower than the national average. The dotted orange line is lower than the solid orange line, at $2 per watt versus $3.20 per watt in the first quarter of 2015. Marylanders should definitely take advantage of these low system prices to install more solar in their state. Well, all this isn't to say that Maryland isn't already doing very well in the solar industry. As of late 2014, there were 174 solar companies employing just over 3,000 solar workers. Maryland installed 73 megawatts of solar capacity in just 2014 alone, bringing the total installed capacity to 242 megawatts, which is ranked 13th in the country. To put that into perspective, 242 megawatts is enough to power 27,000 average Maryland homes. And the state is already going strong for 2015. In just the first 3 months, Maryland has installed just about 27 megawatts in the state. So how does this all translate to Maryland's K-12 solar schools? Well, in Maryland, there are already a number of solar schools. In fact, there are 36 public and private solar schools across 13 counties and Baltimore City. Going back to our interactive map, you can see most of these schools are spread out throughout the state. Maryland's 36 solar schools hold a solar capacity of 8.35 megawatts, which generates 9.5 million kilowatt hours of electricity every single year. These 36 schools save over $1 million every year in average utility costs, which is approximately $28,000 per school per year, or 23 starting teacher salaries for Maryland teachers. Additionally, the environmental benefits from these 36 schools are large. There are over 6,500 metric tons of carbon dioxide avoided, which is equivalent to 1,300 passenger vehicles taken off the road, or enough carbon sequestered in 5,300 acres of U.S. forests every single year. So for the next few slides, I'll briefly go through the solar schools in the state, broken down by county. So in Anne Arundel County, there are 2 solar schools, the Arlington Echo Outdoor Education Center and the Summit School. Arlington Echo in Millersville has a small solar 2 kilowatt demonstration system with 1,805 kilowatt hours in annual energy savings, which is approximately $90 in annual energy value. The Summit School in Edgewater has a slightly larger 5 kilowatt solar system with nearly 5,800 kilowatt hours in annual energy savings and $647 in annual energy value. Together, Anne Arundel County has a combined capacity of 7 kilowatts, producing $727 worth of electricity every single year. There are 4 solar schools in Baltimore City and Baltimore County combined. The Park School of Baltimore is the only solar school in Baltimore County, while New School Academy, the Grace United Methodist Preschool, and Roland Park County are all located in Baltimore City. The Park School of Baltimore in Pikesville has a 37 kilowatt system, which generates about 42,000 kilowatt hours and $2,138 in annual energy value. New Song Academy in Baltimore County has a smaller system, a 13 kilowatt system, which produces 14,000 kilowatt hours in annual energy savings and $1,600 in annual energy value. The Grace United Methodist Preschool in Baltimore has an 11 kilowatt system that produces 12,000 kilowatt hours in annual energy savings and $1,400 in annual energy value. And finally, we have Roland Park County in Baltimore as well, which has a 36 kilowatt system, which produces about 46,700 kilowatt hours in annual energy savings and $5,137 in annual energy value. Together, both Baltimore City and Baltimore County have a combined capacity of 97 kilowatts, producing over $10,000 worth of electricity every single year. The Eastern Shore has 7 solar schools in 4 counties: Caroline, Dorchester, Kent, and Queen Anne's County. 6 images are shown here because the 2 solar schools in Kent County are recipients of a solar field located in the county. So we have North Caroline High School located in Ridgely, who has a 919 kilowatt system that produces nearly 1,000 megawatt hours in annual energy savings and $125,500 in annual energy value. Colonel Richardson Middle and High School has a 796 kilowatt system generating 908 megawatt hours in annual energy savings and nearly $91,000 in annual energy value. And finally, we had Sothersville Middle School, who has a 33 kilowatt system producing 38,000 megawatt hours in annual energy savings and $3,795 in annual energy value. All 3 of these schools are located in Caroline County. Next, we have Masons Lane Middle School, located in Dorchester County, who has an 803 kilowatt system, generating 893 megawatt hours in annual energy savings and over $107,000 in annual energy value. Next, we have the Wharton Solar Field, which provides power to Kent County High School and Wharton Elementary School. This is a 1,200 kilowatt system, produces 1,300 megawatt hours in annual energy value, and saves the county approximately $164,000. And finally, we have Greensboro Elementary School, located in Queen Anne's County, who has a 315 kilowatt system, 358 megawatt hours in annual energy savings, and $35,000 in annual energy value. Together, the Eastern Shore has a combined capacity of over 4,000 kilowatts, producing over $527,000 worth of electricity every single year. Next up, we have Harford County, who has 6 solar schools, all public schools. Aberdeen High School, located in Aberdeen, has a 149 kilowatt system, producing 169,000 kilowatt hours in annual energy savings and over $18,000 in annual energy value. Bel Air High School in Bel Air has a 107 kilowatt system, producing 121,000 kilowatt hours a year and saving approximately $13,000. Edgewood High School in Edgewood has a 271 kilowatt system, producing 309,000 kilowatt hours in annual energy savings and $34,000 in annual energy value. Fallston High School has a 186 kilowatt system, producing 212 kilowatt hours in annual energy savings and over $23,000 in annual energy value. Magnolia Middle School in Joppa has a 299 kilowatt system, producing 341,000 kilowatt hours in annual energy savings and $37,000 in annual energy value. And finally, we have Patterson Mill High School, located in Bel Air, who has a 262 kilowatt system, produces 299 kilowatt hours in annual energy savings and over nearly $33,000 in annual energy value. Together, the county has a combined capacity of 1,274 kilowatts, producing nearly $160,000 worth of electricity every single year. Howard County has 1 solar school, the Worthington Elementary School, located in Ellicott City. They have a 448 kilowatt system, produces over 511,000 kilowatt hours in annual energy savings and over $52,000 in annual energy value. Next, we have Montgomery County, who has 9 solar schools, 8 public and 1 private school. In fact, Montgomery County has the most solar schools in any county in the state. College Gardens Elementary School in Rockville, a 76 kilowatt system, producing over 86,000 kilowatt hours and saves approximately $10,000 every single year. Lakelands Park Middle School, they have a 110 kilowatt system, producing 124,000 kilowatt hours and saving nearly $15,000 a year. Queens Orchard High School in Gaithersburg has a 238 kilowatt system, producing nearly 267 kilowatt hours and saving the school nearly $33,000 a year. Next, we have Clarksburg High School in Clarksburg, who has a 277 kilowatt system, producing nearly 314,000 kilowatt hours and saving $28,000 a year. Sergeant Shriver Elementary School in Silver Spring has a 92 kilowatt system, producing 102,000 kilowatt hours and saving over $12,000 a year. Next, we have Francis Scott Key Middle School in Silver Spring, who has a 92 kilowatt system, producing 102 kilowatt hours and saving the school approximately $12,000 a year. Richard Montgomery High School, located in Rockville, has a 108 kilowatt system, producing 120 kilowatt hours and saving nearly $14,000 every single year. And the last public solar schools in Montgomery County is Parkland Middle School in Rockville, who has a 151 kilowatt system, producing 168 kilowatt hours and $20,000 every single year. And finally, Montgomery County has 1 private solar school, the Bullis School, who has a 111 kilowatt system, produces 125,000 kilowatt hours and saves them about $10,000 every single year. Altogether, these 9 schools have a combined capacity of 1,255 kilowatts, producing over $155,000 worth of electricity each year. Next, we have Prince George's County, who has 2 solar schools, Samatha Catholic High School and University Park Elementary School. Samatha Catholic High School, located in Hyattsville, has a 127 kilowatt system, producing 141,000 kilowatt hours a year and nearly $17,000 in annual energy value. University Park Elementary School, located in University Park, has a 50 kilowatt system producing 55,600 kilowatt hours every single year and saving the school $6,600 in annual energy value. Together, the county has a combined capacity of 177 kilowatts, producing nearly $23,600 worth of electricity every single year. In Frederick County, there are 3 solar schools: Mother Seton Elementary School, Oakdale High School, and Lucy. We have Mother Seton Elementary School in Emmitsburg, who has a 1 kilowatt system producing 1,337 kilowatt hours in annual energy savings and $120 in annual energy value. Oakdale High School has a 499 kilowatt system producing 565,000 kilowatt hours in annual energy savings and nearly $51,000 in annual energy value. Finally, we have the Lucy School in Middleton, who has a 12 kilowatt system, produces 13,600 kilowatt hours in annual energy savings and just over $1,000 in annual energy value. Together, the county has a combined capacity of 512 kilowatts, producing $52,000 worth of electricity every single year. Finally, we have 2 solar schools in the southern region of Maryland, North Point High School and George Washington Carver Elementary. We have North Point High School, who has a 3 kilowatt system producing 2,894 kilowatt hours in annual energy savings and $289 in annual energy value. And finally, we have George Washington Carver Elementary School in Lexington Park, who has a 510 kilowatt system producing 591,000 kilowatt hours in annual energy savings and nearly $30,000 in annual energy value. Together, the southern region of Maryland has a combined capacity of 513 kilowatts, producing nearly $30,000 worth of electricity every year. And covers all 36 solar schools in the state. Now let's talk about, now that we know that Maryland schools are going solar, let's briefly talk about why. One of the biggest reasons why schools are going solar is that the price of solar is decreasing. When schools are struggling with tight budgets, it's only logical to think of ways to decrease their expenditures. For example, Montgomery County Public Schools entered a lease agreement with SunEdison to install solar energy systems on 8 public schools, saving the school district between $10,000 to $15,000 in the 2013-2014 academic year. Given the low system prices, the district is actually in the process of proposing more rooftop and ground-mounted solar energy projects. These proposed projects are larger than their current systems, and the district anticipates over $100,000 in total savings each year. Oakdale High School in Frederick County is another example. They received a grant in 2011 from the Maryland Energy Administration to install a 499 kilowatt system on their rooftop. The school also signed a public purchase power agreement, which allows the school to only pay 5.5 cents versus 9.14 cents and expects to save up to $317,000 over the contract's 20-year lifetime. With these cost savings, the school district can reinvest the money back into the school. Although examples are rare, in 2012, the Fireball Los Deltas Unified School District in California installed nearly 1 megawatt of solar capacity on 3 schools and used the money saved to reinstate their music program. The solar systems are expected to save the district $900,000 in the first 5 years of operations and several million more over the course of the panel's lifetime. Another strong reason why schools are going solar is the use of solar as a teaching tool. Unfortunately, there hasn't been many instances in which we can correlate a solar energy system directly to higher test rates, but it has been shown that interactive hands-on curricula can enhance student learning and retention. For example, in northern Los Angeles, the Antelope Valley Union High School District installed a 9.6 megawatt solar PV system and partnered with the solar developer to integrate the system into algebra and science lesson plans. Student test scores in these subjects actually increased by 60% during a week-long trial period. Another example is North Point High School in Charles County, Maryland. They installed a small demonstration system, a 2.6 kilowatt system for their alternative energy classes in the school's electrical construction program. There are also many environmental benefits attached to using solar energy as opposed to fossil fuel energies. Electricity generated from solar is free of carbon dioxide and other air pollutants such as nitrous oxides and sulfur dioxide. Additionally, solar schools can save water and land, as solar panels uses significantly less water than their natural gas power plant counterpart, and rooftop PV solar relies on already existing buildings as opposed to large open undisturbed lands. As an example, Maces Lane Middle School in Dorchester County is one of 11 public schools in Dorchester County that has an 803 kilowatt solar energy system that's financed through a power purchase agreement. Although the cost savings was the biggest reason why the school went solar, the school is big on implementing environmentally friendly initiatives and technologies, and believe the solar system fits perfectly in with their sustainability and environmental preservation for the county and the larger community. Another benefit to solar schools is the fact that the industry creates jobs. In Maryland, 125 construction workers were employed for a 20 megawatt solar farm project at the Maryland Correctional Institution, including 3 full-time maintenance jobs for the panel's lifetime after construction was completed. Harvard-based Direct Energy Solar is planning on adding 240 new jobs by the end of 2017, tripling the size of their current workforce. And finally, solar schools can act as centralized emergency centers during natural disasters and build community resiliency, especially if they're equipped with battery storage capabilities. For example, the Florida Solar Energy Center installed more than 115 10 kilowatt PV systems to serve as emergency shelters during natural disasters. Other schools are looking into this option as well, including a junior high school located in Maine. Now that we talked about all the benefits why schools in general should go solar, let's talk about the untapped opportunity for Maryland public K-12 schools. Before we dive into those numbers, let's look at the process behind calculating the numbers behind the untapped solar potential. As I stated earlier, the Solar Foundation released Brighter Future, which counted the number of solar schools in the entire nation. That report also noted the number of schools that A, have the potential to install solar, or B, have the potential to add additional solar on their roof. Each K-12 public school in the nation was hypothetically equipped with a solar system based on the school population ratio. This was under the assumption that a greater student population meant a larger school with greater roof surface space area. The cost of a solar system was either priced at $2 or $2.50 per watt installed. If, after accounting for the time value of money of a 30-year time period, or 30-year NPV, the dollar value was positive, the particular school had the potential to cost-effectively deploy solar. For example, Northeast High School in Arundel County, Maryland, has approximately 1,388 students. It was estimated that the school had the ability to be equipped with a 239 kilowatt system. And with the installed system cost of $2 per watt, the overnight cost of a solar installation on the school was about $470,000 with an annual energy savings of $30,000. Over the course of 30 years, after the solar system is paid off, the school would have a positive net present value of about $72,000. So going back to the untapped potential for solar schools in the state of Maryland. Brighter Maryland identified 1,232 public K-12 schools in the state have the potential to cost-effectively install solar energy systems, which would result in over 123,000 kilowatts of new solar capacity. Together, these schools could generate more than 142,000 megawatt hours per year, surmounting to $15.8 million in potential annual generation value. The net present value of these systems combined over 30 years would be $37 million. And it doesn't stop there. Using the National Renewable Energy Laboratories, NREL's, Jobs and Economic Development model, the state could support 1,441 full-time employees with $188 million in earnings with the deployment of these 1,232 public schools. 27 full-time operation and maintenance jobs will be created over the course of 30 years and will have an economic output of nearly $2,700. This is a table that puts much of the information I just shared in one place. This table lists the 6 public school districts that have a net present value of over $1 million and have the largest opportunities for solar job creation. It is of no surprise that these 6 school districts are on this list, as they are among the top districts with the most students. In fact, these 6 school districts educates nearly 582,000 students, or nearly 70% of the state's K-12 student population. And as you can see, there is a lot of variation. For example, Montgomery County has the greatest 30-year net present value of $6.8 million, but PG County has the greatest potential to employ construction workers. So it's not a linear relationship because different counties have different schools sized with different systems. As we mentioned earlier, solar can be used as a teaching tool in the classroom. The next generation science standards were released in April of 2013 with the goal to create common teaching standards for science education. It's commonly referred to as the Common Core for science education standards. These standards generally focus on 3 dimensions. 1, scientific practices, which focuses on how students behave and engage as they investigate and build models and theories about the natural world. 2, cross-cutting concepts, which are concepts that can bridge disciplinary boundaries and have students connect knowledge from one various disciplines to another. And 3, there are disciplinary core ideas. As of April of 2015, 13 states have adopted these standards. In fact, Maryland was the 4th state to adopt these standards just a couple of months following their release in April. However, there is still a long road ahead of these standards. I said earlier that the next-gen science standards are often compared to the Common Core, but unlike the Common Core, there are no financial incentives for states to adopt these science standards. And as a result, it might take states longer to implement these standards, longer than the 1 to 2 years as expected. The timeline can actually take many more years because curricula still needs to be developed based on new guidelines. Teachers still need to be trained to implement this new curriculum, and standardized tests need to be revised. So the next logical question is, can solar schools contribute to these next generation science standards for the state of Maryland? And the answer is yes, across all different age ranges. For example, in elementary school, one standard asks students to obtain and combine information to describe that energy and fuels are derived from natural resources and their uses affect the environment. Teachers can educate students on the differences between fossil fuels and renewable energies, including wind and sun, and state that the electricity the school runs on comes from natural resources. In middle school, as part of the physical science standards, students are asked to apply scientific principles to design, construct, and test a device that either minimizes or maximizes thermal energy transfer. One of these devices can be in the form of a solar cooker that uses sunlight to cook food inside a box and learn about thermal energy transfers. There are various ways to design a solar cooker, but students can make a similar connection to how solar works on a large scale on a solar PV module. Finally, with other students in high school, they can get more hands-on and actually design and build a device that converts one form of energy into another form, given constraints such as only using renewable energies. Older students can build solar cells, solar ovens, and can even graduate to solar cars if they're super ambitious. In fact, there is a national solar car competition among colleges with cars traveling over 500 miles around a racetrack simply powered by sunlight. One of the greatest things about solar PV technology is its modularity. Students can see small-scale solar on a solar oven or large-scale solar projects on top of school roofs or solar canopies over parking lots. Students may be more invested and interested in solar technology, knowing that they can get hands-on experience in the classroom while also knowing the school takes advantage of such a valuable natural resource. For more information about these next-generation science standards, please visit their website at nextgenscience.org. Like I said earlier, the next-generation science standards will likely take a few years to be fully adopted into the state, as curricula still needs to be developed and teachers still need to learn and familiarize themselves with teaching under these different requirements. However, that doesn't mean that educators with access to a solar school should not introduce their students to solar energy. The National Energy Education Development Project, NEED, have many resources for individuals looking to integrate solar into their curricula. Schools Going Solar, Lessons and Activity for Solar Schools is a great overview, while the website also contains fact sheets and other activities for elementary, intermediate, and secondary students. For more information, please visit their website at need.org. Finally, we have the Department of Energy's Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy resources, and one of which includes Energy Literacy Principles. It's a guidebook intended for anyone involved in the energy education industry looking to better understand solar energy. This resource is not specifically on how to teach solar to students, but how to better understand the broad concepts of solar to become more knowledgeable about this resource. So next, let's talk about how do we actually procure solar. Next up, I'll talk about solar municipal procurement. So there are 5 major steps regarding the solar procurement process. First, I'll talk about stakeholder engagement and goal setting. Before we start any project, we have to think about the project goals and possible outcomes. Does your municipality want a project that maximizes solar production, thus aiming for the largest solar system possible for the space available? Do you want to start small on a pilot basis on one school? Do you want to utilize parking spaces and have parking carports? Those are some of the things that you should think about when deciding to go solar for a particular school. There are also a number of processes that municipalities need to be aware of and the specific action involved. For example, with the utility, there needs to be a discussion about interconnection. Are there interconnection standards that municipalities need to be aware of? Is there a partnership needed for larger projects? Next, the community should always be aware of what's happening in their area. Engage community members and the local government in conversation early so that everyone is aware of the possible projects. Additionally, these stakeholders may lend their expertise, whether they're sustainability or energy offices, city engineers to pre-screen potential sites for structural integrity, or even legal staff to advise on contracts. Zoning can also be a process for concern, especially if there are very stringent zoning regulations regarding solar energy projects. Finally, if there is an environmental review for a solar schools project, making sure those are completed and approved before the project can begin. Another thing to think about that I'm sure a majority of people think about is financing. How do we finance a solar school project? While there are many different ownership structures for a solar installation, we will cover the 2 most basic today, direct ownership and third-party ownership, as well as go through some specific financing tools in a later section. Direct ownership is exactly what it sounds like. The solar school would directly own the system. The benefit to direct ownership is the low cost of capital because there are generally less transaction costs. Third-party ownership is when another individual or company owns a solar energy system. One of the greatest benefits to a third-party ownership is their ability to leverage the federal tax incentive, such as the 30% investment tax credit, or ITC. I will go through some more details on some of these financing mechanisms a little later on. Going back to our procurement process timeline, the next step is in the procurement process is data collection and site identification. When it comes to data collection, we must think of the size we want the solar system to be or how big the system can be. So the first step should be to determine the building's annual energy use. For better accuracy, we recommend analyzing utility bills from the last 3 years. Next, calculate the maximum system size the building would need to meet those needs. In Maryland, 1 kilowatt of power produces approximately 1,320 kilowatt hours of energy per year. Next, identify possible sites. Identify the possible schools that could physically house a solar energy system on the roof or on the ground. A good rule of thumb is the following. 1 kilowatt system generally needs 100 square feet of space, and for those who are a little bit more ambitious, 1 megawatt system needs about 6 acres of space. And finally, to revisit what we talked about before, consider your goals. What are you trying to achieve at the end of the day? After thinking about how big to build, we have to think about what makes a good solar site. Ground-mounted sites should be flat and accessible. Schools generally think about solar car parks in parking lots because this fits this general description. For roof-mounted solar system, roofs should be unobstructed by rooftop equipment. South-facing pitched roofs are ideal to receive the greatest sun exposure, thus highest annual electricity production. Studies have also shown that west-facing roofs are beneficial at reducing peak energy loads, putting less strain into the grid system, and can ultimately have more value to the grid than south-facing roofs. Sites should also not be shaded by trees or other buildings blocking sunlight from hitting the panels. And finally, roofs should be in good condition to support a solar energy system. Typically, solar energy installations on schools take place on newer schools or schools with a roof less than 10 to 15 years old. This is because roofs need to be structurally sound to support a solar array for at least 15 years. If there's a possibility that the roof may need replacing, it might make more financial sense to replace that roof before installing a system. Warranties are something else you should think about because you want to ensure that any rooftop system won't violate any current warranties covering the roof. There are ways to accomplish this, especially if you write a clause in your request for proposals. After we go through all the initial steps of procuring solar, we need to develop, write, and publish a solar request for proposal, or RFP for short, to solicit bids from installers. This is a list of information you will need to gather to write and issue a solar RFP. 1. A summary of your goals and desired project, for example, size. 2. A detailed description of the proposed site, including maps, structural plans, and aerial photography. Going even further, you can even collect infrastructure observations such as distance to graded roofs or electric grid systems. Detailed energy consumption information both for the project site and the general municipal load. 4. An evaluation criteria in which you would be judging the candidates. Some examples of high-value criteria can be, quote, cost effectiveness of the proposals and technical approach of the project. It may also include things that are important to your individual goals, such as leveraging project education value or the ability to contribute to local economic development. A point system is usually common to value-specific criteria. 5. A price proposal template for solar installers to clearly lay out the cost of items and services that they propose. And 6 is suggested that you include a draft contract, which may or may not be a power purchase agreement, so that the solar developer can anticipate what is expected of their work. Given that this is a request for a proposal, you are asking for a number of things. 1. Company qualifications include experience in solar or similar projects, references, and team member qualifications who may be working on the project. This usually includes any training or licenses the team may have acquired, such as a NABCEP certification. 2. Project details, including price proposal, project timeline, project equipment and system size, and expected generation. 3. They should also provide any comments on the draft contract that you may have provided. And finally, detailed plans for construction, financing, measurement and verification, operation and maintenance, decommissioning, and environmental permitting if necessary. For a free guide on developing solar requests for proposals, including sample RFPs and overcoming common pitfalls to writing an RFP, the Solar Foundation's Steps to Successful Solar Request for Proposal is available on our website at thesolarfoundation.org. Moving on, after publishing an RFP, the next logical step would be to review bids and select a developer. During the review and evaluation period, stick with the evaluation criteria laid out earlier. Consider the weights of each criterion. There are several important things to consider, such as the developer and his or her team's experience, the project's price tag, the approach, and finally the financial resources that they may be able to provide. There might also be some additional adders to the price, such as local labor or materials, and additional services such as an educational tie-in to the project. Finally, contract negotiation. Timeline for requests for proposals varies, but for larger projects, this process can take up to 6 months after the initial release of an RFP. to go through the process of reviewing and agreeing to go with the developer. Finally, for more information about solar municipal procurement, there are many basic resources, including the Solar Foundation's considerations for investing in solar energy, which ask some key questions regarding solar procurement. The Interstate Renewable Energy Councils, or IREC, has a great toolkit, which also includes information about obtaining a power purchase agreement, which is one of the most popular financing options for solar schools today. Speaking of financing, let's get to that next. While solar systems are great, how do schools and school districts get the large upfront money to install these systems? One of the most popular financing tools is power purchase agreements, or PPAs. In Maryland, in fact, 20 solar schools have used PPAs, including schools in Dorchester, Kent, and Montgomery counties. For power purchase agreements, there are generally two parties involved, the facility owner, or the school district, and the system owner, or the solar developer. The school district provides a location for the school, be it a rooftop or ground-mounted structure, and agrees to sign a 15 to 20-year lease agreement with the system owner. The system owner or solar developer puts forth the cost to install the system and owns, operates, and maintains the system that sits on the school property. In return, the facility owner or the school district pays the electricity it uses for a discounted or flat rate. The developer is also responsible for the upkeep of the solar energy system and may decide to remove the system at the end of the agreement or simply transfer ownership over to the district. One of the greatest advantages to signing a power purchase agreement is that the solar developer can leverage the Solar Investment Tax Credit, or the ITC, which currently provides a credit equal to 30% of the total system installation cost, and is only available to tax-paying entities. The developer can also take advantage of the accelerated depreciation benefits, where they can deduct about 20% of the total system cost each year for 5 years. These two federal tax incentives can reduce system costs by 50 to 60% over a period of time, and as a result can pass a portion onto the school district, lowering overall costs. As stated, power purchase agreements are very popular for schools throughout the nation, including Maryland. Many times school districts may bundle schools together with one solar developer. For example, both Harford County and Montgomery County signed a power purchase agreement to lease solar on 6 and 8 public schools respectively with SunEdison. There are numerous resources for those of you looking to finance a solar school using a power purchase agreement. NREL's Power Purchase Agreement Checklist for state and local governments provides a higher overview plan and checklist to implement a PPA and provides several financial and contractual considerations. As earlier mentioned, IREC recently released a PPA toolkit under the Solar Outreach Partnership. This toolkit presents common challenges as well as the associated costs and provides a diverse list of resources for local governments looking to pursue solar under a PPA arrangement. The toolkit also presents a number of case studies as well as model PPA documents. Finally, we must not forget the many Maryland school districts that have implemented solar through power purchase agreements. They may provide valuable insight on their experiences, especially local jurisdictions and solar developers. Another private financing option for schools looking to deploy solar is an energy services performance contract. These contracts are between two parties, a client, which in our case is a school, and an energy service company, or ESCO. The process is pretty straightforward. The school district approaches an ESCO to perform a comprehensive energy audit of a specific or set number of school buildings to identify a number of energy savings measures. An ESCO may recommend a solar system as an energy saving recommendation. The school looks at this list of recommendations, decides which measures to implement, and the ESCOs work with the school to implement some of these recommendations. Some ESCOs may even cover the upfront costs, receiving compensation through cost savings for the client. After the contract is over, all the cost savings are accrued by the client. One of the biggest advantages to using an ESPC is that the ESCO guarantees energy savings to cover the project costs during the length of the contract. If the savings don't materialize, the ESCO is responsible for the difference, not the client. There are no cases of energy services performance contracts for solar schools in the state of Maryland, but they do occur in other parts of the country. For example, in Mahopac in upstate New York, the school district partnered with Con Edison Solutions to complete an energy audit for the district's 6 schools and 2 administration buildings. Con Edison Solutions recommended a number of measures, including a solar PV system. Keep in mind that the solar energy system was just one of many energy savings recommendations, but altogether, the ESCO guaranteed the district $546,000 in annual savings. For those interested in learning more about ESPCs, there are also a number of available resources for your reading pleasure. The Pacific Northwest National Laboratory and the Portland Energy Conservation prepared a guide to performance contracting with ESCOs that provides a broad overview of ESCOs in the ESPC process. The Maryland Energy Administration's Guide for Energy Performance Contracting for Local Governments is more specific to the state of Maryland and provides a broad overview, including templates for requests for proposals. And finally, the North Carolina Clean Energy Technology Center has a specific guidebook for integrating solar PV into ESPCs for local governments, including case studies of successful public projects. Of course, this is not an exhaustive list of all the resources, but this is a good place to start. Next, we'll switch gears and talk about some public financing programs. The Maryland Clean Energy Center, or MCEC, has a program called the Maryland Clean Energy Capital Program, or MCAP, which uses tax-exempt bonds to finance energy-related projects for nonprofits and the MUSH sector in Maryland. MUSH stands for Municipal, University, School, and Hospital. This program acts a lot like energy services performance contracts, but instead of working directly with an ESCO to arrange for funding, the client approaches MCEC to fund the project through these tax-exempt bonds. The client still needs to contract with an ESCO to perform an energy audit and come up with an itemized list of energy savings recommendations, but MCEC signs a performance contract with the ESCO to ensure that the ESCO can guarantee the amount of cost savings, energy savings to cover the cost. MCEC also signs another contract, this time with the client, to ensure that the client is making all the bond payments. MCEC has already completed 3 energy efficiency and conservation projects in the state of Maryland, although none of them have included a solar energy project. However, MCEC is still very open to completing a schools project given the right circumstances. For more information regarding the MCAP program, please reach out to the Maryland Clean Energy Center. Remember that clients still need to partner with an ESCO to complete an energy audit and receive a list of recommendations before working with MCEC. Another financing tool for schools are qualified energy conservation bonds. These bonds are taxable bonds with interest rates that are partially subsidized by the U.S. Treasury, specifically for renewable energy and energy efficiency projects. Unfortunately, they have not been very popular because they can be quite complicated and can have high transaction costs if projects aren't very large. In 2009, Congress allocated $58 million in bond authority to the state of Maryland. And as of December of 2014, only 18%, about $10 million of this have been used. $6.5 million to finance capital improvements at St. Mary's County Public Schools and $4.1 million to finance equipment lease purchases for Montgomery County. Counties with a population size greater than 100,000 people receive a sub-allocation, and 11 counties in Baltimore City currently have sub-allocations ranging from $1 to $8 million. As of December of 2014, there are still $6 million left for the state of Maryland for other less populated counties. There are no solar schools in Maryland that have used qualified energy conservation bonds to finance their projects, but other states have. In 2011 and 2012, 6 high schools in Oxnard, California were equipped with solar energy systems after the school district was looking for a relief for their $1.3 million electricity bill. So faced with a decreasing general fund, they looked at solar as a smart financial move and equipped 6 high schools in their district with solar energy systems. The system were financed with $19 million in QECBS, with $6 million in Measure H general obligation bonds used to improve school infrastructure and facilities. The school district was also fortunate enough to be eligible in $6 million in California Solar Initiative rebates, which was based on the actual system performance over the project's first 5 years. The most comprehensive QECB resource is one published by the Energy Programs Consortium. They publish a biannual report that lays out the details as well as common barriers and solutions to QECB issuances in communities around the nation. This report is also great to view the different case studies, although not all pertaining to solar schools, and any new projects since their last publication. Finally, we have solar collaborative procurement. It's exactly what it sounds like. Multiple clients grouped together to purchase solar in a bundled package. Some advantages of solar collaborative procurement is that it lowers the project costs because overall transaction fees are generally less for larger projects as opposed to smaller projects. Bundled projects also allow for collaboration between people with diverse backgrounds and experiences in the solar industry, as well as access to a larger pool of resources. Taken together, there's an overall lower project risk for everyone. The World Resources Institute has a great resource for solar collaborative procurement for those looking for best practices. In San Ramon Valley Unified School District, 5 schools joined together to install solar car parts designed to meet 2/3 of the district's electricity needs. The district was expected to save over $11 million over the course of 20 years. Thank you for attending this presentation on solar schools in the state of Maryland. For more information, please visit the Solar Foundation's website at www.thesolarfoundation.org.